welcome to Whispers of Ink. I'm Machado de Assis, and now I will read one of my stories.
Let's start with the book One for Another, which is part of my novels collection. Chapter 1. I was in my early 60s when this happened. Muse, help me remember the causes of that romantic passion. Tell me its stages and how it ended. Don't speak in verse, even though I wrote a lot of poetry back then. No, prose is enough plain, simple, without blue skies or white graces. Just the prose of the notary. I am in this town in Sierra. It was in Rio de Janeiro. I was 20 years old, more or less. I had no joy, far from my family, living in a poor student's attic on Rua da Misericordia. Life for a math student should have been fun. After coffee and a cigarette, my dreams didn't go much further than going to the theater now and then. But even that routine brought a bitter drop into my life. That's exactly what I wrote in some kind of diary I kept back then. A diary I tore up years later. I saw her at the theater. She was a beautiful, rich young woman dressed in silks and jewels. Her arm rested on the edge of the box, and she held a pair of opera glasses in her hand. I was in the gallery and saw her from there. I liked her gesture. At the end of the first act, when she stood up, I liked her figure. And from that moment on until the end of the show, I had eyes for no one else, for nothing else. I was completely taken by her. If I had been with my friends, like I usually was, I probably wouldn't have paid her more than 2 minutes of attention. But that night I was alone, surrounded by strangers, and I was inspired. Earlier, at dinner, I had written a sonnet in my head. To make things worse, her Bateri had stayed at the theater door before going up to the gallery, just watching families arrive. The parade of women, the air filled with perfumes, the sparkle of jewels, it all made me dizzy. And to top it all off, I had just finished reading one of Octave Feuillet's aristocratic novels. I bought the copy for a few coins, don't remember from which old bookshop. In that state of mind, I saw that girl sitting in box number 5, first row on the left, at the Lyric Theater. Before the show ended, I ran down the stairs, 4 steps at a time, and came to stand in the hallway, right in front of Sylvia's box. I gave her that name because it felt sweet, and I must have read it somewhere long ago. Sylvia stepped out onto the box doorway just after the opera ended. She wore a rich cashmere cloak, and her eyes couldn't see them clearly from the top seats, but they alone were worth more than all the jewels and lights in the theater. Another lady stood with her, and 2 men offered their arms. I followed them right away. The walk felt slow, and I wished it would never end, but it did. Sylvia climbed into the carriage waiting for her family, and the horses took my treasure away with them. That same night, I wrote my poem, The Vision. I slept poorly and woke up early. I opened the attic window, and the light that came into my small room only made my madness from the night before worse. I compared my simple student things, my worn books, my old clothes stores, silks, cashmeres, jewels, and horses. I wrote a few 6-line verses, but I won't copy them here. I already recited them to my clerk, telling her they were no good. And I truly believe they weren't. If I did write them down, it would only have been to show honesty and modesty, but I prefer peace at home over finishing what I started. Truthfully, I can't deny that I was quite distracted back then. Maybe not just by that girl from the theater, but by all the others like her girls of the same class, dressed in the same fine clothes. I went back to the theater a few days later and saw her again, in another box, just as luxurious and graceful. My school friends didn't let me stare at her all night. But since they truly loved the music and listened to it without distraction, I used the best parts of the opera to watch my mysterious girl. "Who is that girl?" I asked one of them as we left the lobby. "I don't know. No one told me anything. I never saw her again on Rua do Ouvidor, not in the elegant neighborhoods I walked through, hoping to find her by chance. In the end, I gave up on that dream and stayed in my attic with my books and poems." That's when the other girl appeared. I lived in a cramped attic room that overlooked the Castle Hill neighborhood. One day, as I looked out toward the hill, I noticed a woman standing in one of those old houses clinging to the slope, like they were trying to hold on for dear life. I could only guess she was a woman by the shape of her dress. From where I stood below and at a distance I couldn't make out her face. But I was used to catching glimpses of women in the windows of other houses on the hill, or on the rooftops of Rua da Misericordia, where some would come out to hang their washed clothes. None of them ever held my attention for long. But this one, something about her kept me watching. Maybe it was just my own loneliness. I had been feeling the dull ache of unfulfilled longing, like a fever that had just started to fade. Or maybe probably was the way she stood there, staring straight toward me from the dark back of her window. At first I wasn't sure. But then I straightened my back, lifted my head, leaned forward over the roof, stepped back, made a few gestures. I wanted to show that I was curious, interested. She didn't move away. Not right away, at least. Sometimes she would lean forward, or look to one side, then the other. But she always came back to the same spot, still and silent in the shadows. That was in the morning. That night, I couldn't go home early, had dinner with the guys. But the next morning, the moment I opened my window, there she was again, exactly where I had seen her the day before. She was waiting for me. I'm almost sure of it. Her posture hadn't changed. I don't know if I really saw her move, but I felt like she did. And why wouldn't she? If she was waiting, it made sense. On the third day, I waved to her from below. She didn't wave back. A moment later, she disappeared inside. But she came out again soon after, her eyes if she had kept them on me the whole time. I couldn't tell. But I could feel her looking. And so it went. Those quiet, wordless meetings went on for about 2 weeks. Then I had a philosophical thought about the difference between social classes. I told myself that fortune itself must be behind this hierarchy of people. The rich and elegant girl, from a high-class background, didn't even notice me, even though I was just a few steps away, staring at her without blinking. But this other girl, more modest or even poor, was the first to see me and to catch my attention. That's just how it is, I thought. Fate has chosen this other person for me, one who doesn't need to climb up or fall down, so our lives can intertwine and give us the happiness we deserve. This gave me the idea for a poem. I rushed to my old pine table and wrote my little poem called The Waves. Life is a wave divided in two. Life is a wave divided in two. Oh, how many times did I recite those lines to my classmates at school and to a family who lived on Rua dos Arcos. I didn't visit many other homes back then. The family included a couple and an aunt who also wrote poetry. It wasn't until many years later that I realized her poems weren't very good. At the time, I thought they were excellent. She also liked mine, and she called the ones in my poems sublime. As soon as I walked in, she would sit at the slightly out-of-tune piano, and turning toward me say, "Mr. Justino, let's hear the poem." "Oh, Mrs. Adelaide, just some verses." "Just some verses? Come on, life is a wave divided in two." And I would reply, "Life is a wave divided in two." "Delightful," she would exclaim at the end, rolling her tired, greedy eyes with pleasure. My classmates at school were not quite as excited. Some liked the verses, others clearly didn't care much for them, but I always blamed jealousy or a lack of artistic taste. I had the poem published in the weekly newspapers of the time. I know it was recited in many homes, and I still remember one day walking down Rua do Ouvidor when I overheard a lady say to another, "There goes the author of The Waves." But none of that fame made me forget the girl from Castello Hill, and she didn't forget me either. From a distance, without being able to make out each other's faces, we kept staring in silence. Well, almost in silence. Sometimes I caught myself speaking out loud, "But who could that girl be?" or something like that. Maybe she was asking herself the same question. One day, thinking of Sylvia, I tried to comfort myself with this thought. She's just another girl. This one might even be better. She looks elegant, and I can tell even from down here far away. Rooftop flirtations are not well understood by people who have only ever dated in the streets. That's why they don't know how special they are. These rooftop romances are more graceful, more poetic. I was already used to them. I had many before, from attic to attic, sometimes even closer. We saw each other. She was hanging wet laundry, and I was flipping through my school books. We exchanged smiles from one rooftop to another, until someone, a mother, noticed the secret looks and ordered the windows shut. Or maybe one of us got sick or upset, and that was the end. But this time, just when I couldn't see her face clearly, and she couldn't see mine, the romance grew stronger and lasted longer. Maybe because of that. Mystery plays a big role in such things. The unknown is always more attractive. So days passed, then weeks. We even had our own hours, special days when we would look at each other for longer. After the first few days, I started to worry I was wrong. Maybe she wasn't looking at me at all. Maybe she was watching another attic, or just staring at the sky. The sky, I thought, wouldn't hold her attention so much. But the way she moved, the way she seemed to answer the silent questions I sent her way, all of that made me sure. It was really us, the two of us, falling for each other. I told my secret to a friend from school, one of my closest friends back then. "Justino," he said to me one day, "why don't you go up to Castello Hill?" "I don't know where her house is," I replied. Justino leaned back in his chair and stared out the window of the Café Carceller. The street below was busy, but his eyes searched for something higher up, somewhere beyond the noise and dust. "Well, look at the position from down here," he said. "Notice the people near the bottom and climb up. If she's not on the slope, she must be somewhere at the top." "But that's not all," I replied. "I think even if I go there and find the house, it won't mean much. I might recognize her, sure, but how will she know who I am?" "Good point," he laughed. You just observe her, and later write to tell her that a certain young man passed by her door on a certain day, at a certain hour. Same guy from the attic on Rua de Misericordia. I thought of that, I said after a pause. But I admit I didn't want to try anything. Why not? My friend, the best part of this love is the mystery. Oh, poetry again. No, not poetry. If I get close to her, maybe I'll end up marrying her. But how can I marry without money? She would have to wait for me to finish school and find a job. All right then, I said. This is just a passing flirtation. Still, it's good for poems and passing the time. I threw away my cigarette, barely touched, and slammed my fist on the marble table. A waiter rushed over to ask what we wanted. Go bother someone else, I told him. After a few moments, I turned back to Josino. I'm not trying to waste time, I said. Sure, maybe write some poems. That's fine. She deserves them. But forget about letting time kill me. I won't let her fall into someone else's arms. So do you want to kidnap her? No, Sino. You know what I mean, Fernandez. I want to marry her, but I can't. I'm in love, and I don't have the money. That's my problem. Be serious, Josino. Are you really in love with this girl? I am. This girl, or this shadow, because you don't even know if she's young or old. I saw her. Her shape is young. In the end, she's just a shadow. You've never seen her face. You don't know if she's ugly or beautiful. She's beautiful. How do you know? I just do. People in love have a kind of sense that lets them see and understand hidden or unclear things, as if they were clear and obvious. He looked at me with that smirk he always had, the one that made you want to punch him in the face. Believe me, Fernandez, I said. This girl is beautiful, poor, and madly in love with me. I swear to God, just like that carriage is sitting right there. Carriage? What carriage, Josino? He asked, blowing smoke from his cigarette. That's an orange tree. It looks like a carriage because of the horse, but every orange tree has a horse. Some have two. That's what we learned in our second year at school. You yourself are a horse tied to an orange tree, just like me. We're both standing next to a wall. This is the wall of Troy. Troy belongs to the Trojans, and your lady is naturally sewing on the other side. He stood up, paid for the coffee, and said, Goodbye, Josino. I give you less than 3 months before you're crazy. Unless, of course, I'm the one who's crazy. Go laugh at someone else, you idiot, I shouted, furious. Amen, he said. That was Fernandez always joking, always the class clown. But everyone liked him, and I liked him more than anyone. The next day, he came to visit me in my attic. He wanted to see the house on Castello Hill. First, I checked if she was at the window. When I saw she wasn't, I showed him the house. He looked carefully at where it was and said he was going to walk by it later. But I didn't ask you to do that. I know. But I want to see for myself. He'll tell you later if she's good or bad. Wait a second, there's someone over there. Come in, I said, pulling him inside. She might see you and think I'm spreading the news about our love story. Come in and wait. There she is. That's her, I whispered. Fernandez couldn't see her face from where we were. He couldn't tell if she was ugly or pretty, but he agreed that her posture was elegant. As for the house, he now knew where it was. He promised to walk by often, until he could finally see her clearly. "Why don't you just buy a pair of binoculars?" he asked me. I thought that was a great idea. If I had money back then, I would bought a pair the very next morning. But at that time, I didn't have enough, and binoculars weren't cheap. I told him the truth first. I didn't have the money. Then I added that maybe it wasn't even worth it, since everything was still unclear and uncertain. It was better not to know the girl completely. Fernandez laughed, said goodbye, and left. Nothing changed. Days and weeks passed, only pushing us further apart, never closing the distance. We kept watching each other from afar. I began waving with my handkerchief, and she did the same. At night, I kept my candle lit late. She, if not staying up until the same hour, stayed until 10, and one night she put out her candle at 11. Usually, even when I no longer saw her light, I kept mine burning, so she would stay awake, thinking about me. But this didn't happen every night from the beginning. I still had my night habits walks, theaters, conversations, and cafes, which made up a big part of my life as a student. I didn't change right away. But after a month, I started staying home every night. Other students noticed I was missing. My close friends spread the word that I was having a secret and forbidden love. The rest of my time went to the muses. I called them, and they came, gentle and friendly. For hours, we filled pages with poems of all kinds and meters, many of which were soon published in newspapers. One of these poems was dedicated to the mysterious girl from Castello. There were no other clues. I thought that one was enough for the purpose, to be read and understood. Good Lord help me. From her behavior that day, I believed she had read the poem, understood it at last, and even kissed the paper. I called her Pia. If you ask me why I chose that name, I won't be able to tell you. It was the first name that came to mind, maybe because Ristori was acting in Pia di Tolomei at the time. Just as I had named the other girl Sylvia, I gave this one the name Pia. It was a habit of mine, giving them names. The difference was that this name suited better for poetic and moral references. I naturally gave the unknown girl the kindness of a great soul to a humble life, and I wrote exactly that in verse, both rhymed and free. One day when I opened the window, my love was not there. Josino and I met every morning, always at the same time. Even without a clock, I knew exactly when to wake up right before she appeared. Every day, when I opened the window, there she was, waiting for me on the hill. But one day, the window was closed. I thought maybe she was late, so I waited. Time passed, and finally I left for lunch and then school. The next day was the same. I figured she might be away, or maybe not feeling well. Still, I waited. 2 days passed. Then 3. A week. I became completely lost. I don't exaggerate, was out of my mind. I couldn't hide it either. My friend from school noticed something was wrong, so I told him everything. Fernandez couldn't believe it. But wait, Josino. You're telling me you're in love with someone you don't even know? That's right. That's impossible. You've never even met her. Looking at someone from a distance doesn't mean you know them. I saw her. I love her. She loves me. That's all. Okay. Let's say you see her tomorrow on the street. You won't even recognize her. But my heart will. Poet. Mathematician. And honestly, we were both right. I don't need to explain his point. So let me explain mine. My love was never physical, it was all my mind. That's how it began, and how it stayed. He found me already falling in love, but the feeling didn't grow any other way. That's what my heart was like, and why not say it? That's how my time was spent. In the end, I was loving someone who didn't really exist. I was living for a shadow. Just an idea, almost nothing, and still, it made my blood race. This woman, married or single, ugly or beautiful, old or young, whoever she was, I wouldn't recognize her if I saw her on the street, filled me with longing. I regretted not going up the hill to find her earlier. I should have written to her, found out who she was, where she had gone, or if she was sick. Finally, I decided to go up the hill myself. I went looking for her house. After some time and effort, I found it, but it was closed. The neighbors told me the family had moved to one of the outer neighborhoods. They didn't know which one. I leaned in, masking my curiosity with a calculated tone. So, it's the Vieira family? No, sir, she corrected me. It's the Maya family. Pedro Maya. He's a businessman. Right. He has a store on Rua de San Pedro, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe it's Saban. We don't know the street. We don't really talk to the neighbors. Honestly, I think he only started greeting us recently. Seems a bit full of himself. If he's your friend, please forgive me. I gave her a polite nod, though I left the conversation with more questions than answers. I still didn't know where his shop was or which neighborhood they'd moved to. All I knew was that he'd be back home soon, and that was enough for now. I walked downstairs feeling hopeful. Good, I thought. I haven't lost her. She'll come back. Then came the question. Had she thought of me too? I decided she had. My imagination painted a picture of her, wherever she was, surrounded by her family, thinking of the stranger she'd met on Rua da Misericordia. Maybe, just before leaving, she had tried to send me a signal I hadn't noticed. If she had, she might feel a little comforted. But doubt could creep in, and that doubt might turn into worry, which would only deepen her sadness. School holidays were approaching. My plan was to stay in the city, to make up some excuse and wait for her return. But fate had other plans. My mother passed away. I received a letter from my father, telling me to come home immediately. Would you believe I hesitated? I did. But the situation was serious, and my father wasn't someone to argue with. I have no choice. I must go, I told myself. But what about her? How could I let the mysterious PA know I was leaving for the countryside, that I'd be back in 2 or 3 months? And that she should wait for me? At first I thought about asking my friend Fernandez to tell her, to keep the flame alive until I returned. Fernandez was clever, and determined he could he handled it. But I dropped the idea, too embarrassed to ask. Then I thought of another plan. I wouldn't leave the attic. I'd keep renting it, using my father's agent as a guarantor, saying there was no better place for a student to live. And when I came back, maybe she'd be there too. I wasn't going to make the same mistake with someone else, because that window would never open again while I was away. The moment I returned, I'd pick up the conversation right where we left off. With that thought in mind, I boarded the steamer. It's hard for me to admit, but I cried. All I've just told you might sound foolish, even a little silly, and it shows a kind of sensitivity that's far from precise. But since it's true and truth is the only reason this story has any value at all, if it has, I have to tell you exactly what happened back then. I got on the ship and traveled to the province. My father found me strong and handsome. He said he'd heard good things about me, both as a young man and as a student, from his correspondent and other people. I was happy to hear that, and decided to live up to his expectations by studying hard during the holidays. 2 days later, he told me he had decided I should change my career path. I didn't understand what he meant. He explained that, after thinking it over, he believed it was better for me to study law. All his friends were sending their sons to recify. Being a lawyer or a judge were respected professions. Not to mention that the House of Representatives and the Senate were full of lawyers. All the provincial presidents were lawyers too. It was a safer, more brilliant, and more profitable path. He repeated this to me for days. I rejected his generous offer like Artaxerxes' gifts. I argued against his ideas, looked down on legal studies, and I meant it. To me, math and engineering were serious fields. The study and practice of law seemed empty and pointless. A straight line between 2 points mattered more to me than any legal principle. So, I didn't need any love affair to give me strength to say no to recify. Still, it's true that the girl from Castello gave extra fire to my words. At that point, I wanted to finish a romance that had started so well. More than that, I had a personal reason connected to the girl from Castello. I didn't want to die without getting to know her. I left Rio de Janeiro without ever seeing her up close, face to face, and now, thinking about it, that feels absurd. I understood Fernandes completely. The distance made it worse, and my soul began to suffer from what I can only call madness. Yes, madness sounds dramatic, maybe even a little too much, but it's the right word. Or if not, then craziness will dose me thing, really. And it makes this confession feel a bit more ridiculous, which fits how I felt. But I still need some dignity in how I tell this, because back then, I was a lover, a poetic lover, and that poetry was chained to a shadow. My father tried for a while to keep me in recify. He pushed hard, but eventually gave in and let me go back to math. When I couldn't hide how eager I was to return to the capital, he got suspicious. He thought I was chasing some cheap romance and started talking about the corruption of Rio. The capital's always been a pit of ruin, he said. I lost an uncle there. What made him more certain was that I had left my attic room on Rua da Misericordia. That was hard for him to accept. He almost wrote to his contact in the city but didn't. Still, now he thought maybe I had left it for some girl, some fling of mine. And since he wasn't the kind to hold back, He told me straight what he thought and ordered me to confess everything. I'd rather you tell me the truth, whatever it is. I know you're a man now, and I can look the other way as long as you don't lose yourself completely. So come on, what is it? Nothing, Father. Not good. Tell the truth. I already did. If that's true, then write to Mr. Duarte yourself. He'll tell you if that attic is still waiting for you. There aren't many free attic rooms in Rio, not ones that are any good anyway. And I couldn't live outside the city, needed to be near the school. That attic was perfect. I thought again of my Pia. You wouldn't believe the attic, the view, the size, the way it was built. On the roof, there was a pot with forget-me-nots. I gave it to the people downstairs when I left. I'll buy a new one when I get back. I was still on the ship, the salt wind in my hair when my father said it. His voice was warm, but his words hit hard. Buy another one? But you're studying to be an engineer, not a gardener. I smiled, trying to keep it light. Father, flowers bring joy. Even serious students have a few flower pots around. Even the professors do. I hated myself for saying it. At the time, I thought it was clever, but now I see it for what it was, cruel teasing. He was a good man, too trusting, and I used that. I did have the blue flower in a pot. I had given it to the family, yes. But the rest? Made up. You know that already. And you're a poet too, he said, laughing. I left for the capital a few days before I was supposed to. I still remember how it felt. The ship was loud, the sea wild, but my mind was full of poems. That summer, while I was home, I wrote a few poems and sent them to a newspaper in the city. I dated them from the province, so no one would guess I was already back. They were all for the girl from the castle. Some of them talked about closed windows. I compared myself to birds that fly away, but promised to return and do. I swore in those lines that I would see her again soon. I didn't sign them. My father might read them, and then he would know about the attic. But for her, a name wasn't needed. She didn't even know me. On the ship, I met a man from Para. My father introduced us and asked him to look after me. He was a businessman from Rio, traveling with his wife and daughter. Both women were seasick and stayed below deck most of the time. He liked me, the way people do on ships quickly, without much fuss. We talked a lot during the trip. He had family in Belém and was in business with someone in the rubber trade. He told me all about rubber, how it was the future, how fortunes would be made from it. I didn't tell him about the poems. But one day, he saw me reading some verses. You like poetry? He asked, laughing. My daughter Estella loves it. I think she might be a poet herself. I write a few lines now and then, I said, trying to sound humble. You do? Then you must meet Estella. Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about my wife, but my daughter. Once I caught her writing something with a friend at the same table. One on each side. They couldn't finish a line. Feliciana mentioned it to her, and Estella just laughed and said it was a mistake. I'm not so sure. At the port of Recife, I saw Estella and her mother. From there all the way to Rio de Janeiro, I had the chance to talk with them. When I mentioned to the daughter what her father had told me, how poets usually feel more at ease, sharing their work with each other than with strangers, she blushed and said it wasn't true. She had only written a few short rhymes, she explained, nothing of real value. Of course, I disagreed, and I waited for her to show me one of her poems. But she refused to speak more about it. She was about 20 years old, thin and pale. She didn't yet have the elegance and presence I would see in her only after we reached land, about a week after arriving. Her eyes were the color of the sea. That detail inspired me to write a sonnet, which I gave to her. She listened with joy while her parents were there. In the poem, I said that her eyes, like the waves of the ocean, hid the movement of a great and mysterious soul. If I said that in plain prose, it wouldn't sound special. But the verses weren't bad at all. She was kind enough to say they reminded her of the poems of Gonçalves Dias, which was clearly an exaggeration. The next day, I recited for her my lines from the waves. Life is a wave, split in two. She said it was beautiful. It fits the moment perfectly, I added, since we are at sea. No, sir, she replied. These are beautiful verses. Please write them in my album when we arrive. We did arrive. Her father kindly offered me a place to stay. I told him my address, explaining that I lived in a student's attic. Birds also live high up, Estella said. I smiled, thanked her, shook her hand, and hurried to Rua da Misericordia. A girl from the castle was calling me. In my mind, I could see her elegant figure, standing straight in the dark of the window, her curved arms raised like the wings of a vase. Pia, Pia, pure and sweet, my heart beat fast. Here I come, bringing the clean, warm blood of youth. Oh, my sweet and holy Pia. But it wasn't Pia. It wasn't anything like that. For 3, 4, 5 days, the girl from the castle did not appear. I didn't know I had gone back to the attic, so it made sense she didn't come around at our old time. She could have been sick, or out of town on a farm or somewhere in the city. The idea that she might have moved only came to me after 2 full weeks, and I was surprised I hadn't thought of it sooner. She moved away, I told myself. That must be it. But hope pushed back, saying that couldn't be true. Where would she go? How could a girl just disappear when her silhouette looked so perfect in the dark window? High up on the hill, framed so perfectly from a distance, her arms rising just like that, perfectly aligned with my attic window. No, that wasn't possible. People don't just vanish like that. By then, I had already visited the merchant. His daughter gave me her album to write down the recitative from the waves, and she showed me 2 poems she had written since arriving in the city, Guanabara and My Flowers. Which one do you like better? She asked. Both are beautiful, I said. But surely one is better than the other, Estella insisted. You must see a difference. There's a difference in subject, I explained. The first sings of the city and the sea. The second is more personal. It talks about flowers that didn't wait for their owner to return, comparing them to happiness, which also never waits. That's the difference. Estella listened with wide eyes full of life and attention. A hint of a smile showed that my words pleased her. After a moment, she shook her head gently. I think you like Guanabara better. That's not true. Then you don't like it at all? What a thing to say, Miss Estella. Could someone with your talent really write something bad? You think I have talent? A lot of it. That's kind of you. Then you really prefer my flowers? She kept pushing, so I decided it was best to agree, and said that yes, one was better than the other and I chose my flowers. Maybe I was right. Maybe I really did prefer it. After all, Guanabara felt like an echo of Gonçalves Dias. But that choice would end up being my downfall. Estella felt both happy and sad. From that moment on, whenever she showed me some verses, and I thought they were good, I had to fight hard to prove it. She always told me I had fooled her from the very beginning. Time did its job, as it always does. My girl from the castle slowly faded away. One day I saw a figure in the distance, and thought it might be her. The person wore a white blouse. I looked closer. It was a man, his shirt sleeves. I felt so embarrassed, not just for myself, but for holding on to such endless hope, that I even thought about moving houses. What really changed, though, was inside me. My mind, once ruled by dreams, now gave in to reason. Math beat poetry, something it could have done much earlier. I tell my story like this, not sure if anyone will believe me. Not because it's a lie, but because I don't know how to tell it right. I write it as I remember, and as the pen allows, which isn't much, not too little, not too much. Math didn't just win over poetry. It tried to end the poems for good. It told me not to go back to Estella's house. That's exactly what it'll do, I said. No more poems from men or women. Besides, I think about that fiery girl too much already. Fiery. A few weeks later, the sound of that word filled me with guilt. I had fallen in love with her. I thought her verses were amazing. Her face was angelic, her voice like silver bells rhyming with divine. My divine muse. She was perfection, charm, salvation. The poems I wrote in that time could not be counted by any human math. My muse came into my life and kicked math out the door. She stayed, and with her rhythms and rhymes, which weren't as rich or rare back then as they are now. The flowers I rhymed with love, the skies I rhymed with veils, could hold other worlds and still have room. Estella wasn't as productive as I was, but her poems stayed just as lovely. Soon, I told her so with great joy. "Are you making fun of me?" she asked. "No, my angel. Why would I? These poems are beautiful. Please, read another." And she did. I listened with wide eyes, completely lost in her words. I was pacing the room, my hands behind my back, when the idea struck me like lightning. "What if we publish our poems together?" I said. She looked up from her book, surprised but curious. "Together?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, "a single volume." "Versos della e delle. What do you think?" She smiled, her eyes lighting up. "I love it," she said. And just like that, we were off. She was so excited she pulled out a blank notebook and started copying her poems right away. But then came the question, should we alternate our poems throughout the book, or separate them into two parts? We spent days debating it. She liked the idea of mixing them, so readers wouldn't know who wrote what. I agreed, though I added, some will be recognized by subject, others by style. She frowned. So my style isn't good enough? Don't be silly, Estella, I said, trying to calm her. That's not what I meant at all. But she was stubborn. I think it is what you meant. I don't write well, do I? I dropped to my knees. I swear to the sky and the earth, to your eyes, to everything sacred, I don't believe that for a second. She laughed, finally softening. All right. I forgive you. And with that, she went back to work, carefully writing her poems into the notebook. We were deep into this project when I started skipping school more often. Fernandez, my old friend, noticed. He hadn't seen much of me either. One day he invited me to a cafe. I expected a casual chat, but he had news. I'm getting married, he said. I blinked. You? Married? Yes. Early next year, right after I graduate. And you won't believe who I'm marrying. I smirked. Let me guess, the girl from the castle. He stared at me. How did you know? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I leaned back and said, Well, I guess I'm getting married too. He nearly dropped his cup. Oh, so? I nodded. Not officially proposed yet, but it's certain. I won't wait until I finish school. It'll happen in a few months. Is it the girl from the castle? No. Never thought of her again. It's someone else. I just need to ask her father's permission. She's the daughter of a merchant. I met her on a ship. He laughed. What a strange coincidence. Then he told me everything. It turned out his fiancée was the girl from the castle. When he found out she lived there, he mentioned me and our old flirtation. At first, she denied it, but he kept pushing until she finally admitted the truth and laughed about it. You know I don't care about past loves, he said. Want to meet her? I hesitated. Now that we're both getting married, and you two have never met, it would be interesting. He grinned. Exactly. He'll tell Margarita you're someone else, but I won't tell you who she is. You'll know the truth, but she won't. A few days later, Fernandez took me to his fiancée house. It was on Rua do Senado, in a modest home, that I found a small family: father, mother, and 2 daughters. One of them 11 years old, Donna. Margarita welcomed me warmly. She was eager to meet a friend and colleague of her fiancé, someone as distinguished as she had often heard him describe. I didn't say much. I wanted to honor the choice my friend Fernandez had made, but no words came to me that could truly express that feeling. I was, or I should have been, all eyes and amazement. She really was a beautiful young woman. Seeing her, I remembered the way we used to wave to each other from our windows. For a moment I almost felt like throwing her that symbolic kiss again, just like in the old days, asking her to raise her arms like she used to do. She never kissed back, but somehow, she always lifted her arms by instinct, as if moved by something inside her. And those long hours, those afternoons and nights, so many memories came rushing in all at once. They filled my soul, my vision, the room, everything around us. Doctor often speaks of you, Margarita said again. He speaks of a friend, I finally murmured. Since he had told me she knew I was the boy from the attic, I couldn't help but see echoes of our past in every move she made. Maybe it was just my imagination, but what else could a poet's soul do, lost among numbers and logic? I left that house full of old memories. But once outside, the sight of the street in the present moment, and especially the image of Estella, swept those ghosts away. Some meetings are strange like that. While I was with Margarita, reliving the past, Estella was writing a poem. She showed it to me the next day. It was titled, "What is the Past?" I immediately picked up my pencil and answered with a poem of my own, which I called Nothing. I won't write mine here, because I don't think they deserve to be printed in speaking of mine, of course. Hers were good, but I don't feel right sharing them. They're secrets of the heart. All I'll say is that Estella, being modest, thought her verses were worse than mine. It took a lot of convincing to make her see otherwise. She read them over 3 or 4 times while I watched, once she was convinced. In the middle of the night, I caught her staring blankly into the air. Because I was jealous, I asked if she was thinking about someone. What nonsense. But, anyway, I was just reciting the verses. Do you really think they're beautiful? They're very beautiful. Recite them yourself. I took Estella's verses and read them again. The pleasure with which she listened was not huge, but great, very great. So great, in fact, that I recited them once more. They're beautiful, I said in the end. Don't say that. Yes, I will. They're delightful. She didn't believe me, although she smiled. What she did was recite the verses again, once or twice more, I think twice. There were only 3 stanzas. I left that night knowing them by heart. The poetry gave my girlfriend a special charm. When I was with Fernandez, I told him this. He would tell me other things about Margarita, and in this way we shared our feelings of happiness. One day, he told me he would get married in 3 months. Everything was settled yesterday. What about you? I'll see. I think soon. They married on schedule. I was there at the Church of Sacramento. Even now I wonder how I could attend the wedding of the girl from Castello. True, I was tied to another, but memories, whatever my current situation, should have made that display of my friend's happiness with her absolutely unbearable. Margarita smiled at him with joy, and accepted my congratulations without the slightest trace of the past. She smiled at me too, like any other bride. A bullet that took my friend's life would have hurt me deeply, causing me long and painful suffering. Yet there was a moment he can't remember exactly when, maybe as we entered or left the church. Or at the altar, or even at their house, there was a moment when, if he had collapsed there with some sudden illness, I wouldn't have cursed the sky. Explain that to me. These were the feelings and thoughts that hit me. And with some of them still in my head, I left their house at 10 that night. They were about to start dancing. Estella asked me the next day, "So, was the bride beautiful?" I said, she was. Very beautiful. I thought for a moment and then answered, not as beautiful as you will be when you wear the same veil. She didn't believe me, even though I swore it was true. She said I was just being polite. The truth was, I had written a poem the day before about that very subject. But it was so bad that I didn't want to show it to her. I only told her the first line. if I must wear a bride's veil or a nun's robe. Tell me the rest, she said. No, because they're no good. I didn't insist, and she, curious now, wanted to prove to herself that the lines were bad. So she recited them anyway. To be honest, I didn't think they were that bad. That was our first real fight. She thought I was making fun of her and didn't speak to me for about 20 minutes. In the end, we made up. And because I didn't ask for the poem again, she saw that as proof that it was truly bad and threw it away. I showed her otherwise by grabbing the paper from her hand. "I'll give you a copy tomorrow," I said. That night, I copied the lines, dreamed about her, and the next day brought her the copy. I found her on the way with some friends. They were going to watch a big wedding. I went with them. At the church door, there were fancy carriages, beautiful horses, well-dressed servants, and crowds of people, outside and inside. The bride and groom, their families, and the guests were all waiting for the priest, who arrived a few minutes later. I understood why the girls liked to watch other people's weddings. I was excited too. But I don't believe anyone there, I swear, felt what I felt when I looked at the bride. It was none other than the girl from the theater, the one I had called Sylvia because I didn't know her real name. I had seen her only once before, but her face had never left my memory, not even with Margarita, not even with Estela. No one noticed the shock I felt. Everyone's eyes were on her, and him. Who was he? A young doctor. I hadn't seen this girl more than once, and that brief meeting had been at the theater that night. But now, watching her get married, just as I had watched Margarita do the same, gave the moment a strange and painful meaning. Was I doomed to see every secret hope slip into someone else's arms? I tried to pay little attention to Sylvia's wedding, looking instead at other guests, at the lights, at the floor beneath my feet. In the end, everything passed, as it always does. The newlyweds, their parents, and the guests all left. Estela and her friends went out to see them enter their carriages. "What's wrong?" Estela asked me as we walked down the street. "I'll tell you later." "When?" "Soon." Back home, I told her I had been thinking about the day when it would be our turn to be the center of attention, when our happiness would finally become real. "It won't be long," I added. "Once I finish school, I'll go ask for your hand." Her eyes seemed to agree, and her muse, too, spoke through verses that were among the most beautiful I had ever read from my poetess. Yes, marriage felt more and more like something I needed, something I had to reach for. I began to organize my life so that, as soon as I graduated, I could move forward without delay. Until then, there was no way my father would agree. Estela, for her part, was ready for anything. She told me so in both her prose and her poetry. The prose came in our quiet night talks by the window. The poetry came in a sonnet where she compared herself to a leaf, carried by the wind wherever it chose to go. The last line said, "I am the leaf, and you'll be the wind." Now, as I remember all of this, I feel that some of these memories would have been better forgotten. Bringing them back isn't worth the effort, and it certainly isn't worth the sadness. The longing, whatever we choose to call that quiet ache that doesn't make us hate today, but leaves a soft taste of yesterday on the tongue. No, I will not leave my clerk job at the notaris office in Sierra at my age, after everything I've lived through. It's the closest thing to a paradise I know, The documents may not rhyme with each other, but they rhyme with the fees they bring. And they always give me a reason to remember the lost verses of my youth and some, I suppose, that will never fade. I will stay a notary. We were getting by, day by day, without any serious trouble, when one afternoon Estella's father came home and told his wife and daughter he had to go to São Paulo. I didn't understand why Dona Feliciana turned pale. She was a quiet, serious woman, with a life full of routine and no strong feelings or excitement. Later on, people told me things that helped me make sense of her reaction. It seemed her husband was having serious money problems, and some said he had once thought about leaving Rio de Janeiro. That's what some people told me. Others whispered about love affairs. Everything might have been false, but I believe Donna Feliciana was afraid of both possibilities, or maybe both together. With a softness I'll never forget, she whispered, "Guimarães, take me with you to São Paulo." Guimarães refused. But his wife kept asking, saying she really wanted to see São Paulo. When he kept saying no, explaining it was a business trip, and he couldn't bring the whole family and that it would cause too much trouble, her tone changed. She gave him a look full of suspicion, and he backed off a little. "Then let's all go," she said. "We should all go to São Paulo." "Yes," he replied. "We could go. But it's only for a short time, 5 or 6 weeks, maybe 2 months." "Is it worth the effort, Feliciana?" He added, "Let's go if you want." But the steamships aren't very comfortable. I looked at Estella and silently begged her to say something, to stop her mother from going. Estella had gone pale and seemed unable to speak, or so I thought. But then, a few moments later, when she heard her father agree to take them all to São Paulo, she whispered a line full of sadness and surrender. "Once again the sea. One day I will go down to the bottom, searching for the pearl of death." "Those are the words of a dreamer, child," her mother scolded gently. "The sea is good for people. Our goodbyes were like any goodbyes between lovers, even when the separation is short, only 1 or 2 months. The day before I left, we both had the same idea, to write poems about our sadness at parting and our joy at the thought of meeting again. She admitted this time her verses were better. But sadness, or something else, made her think otherwise. We spent a few minutes arguing. I insisted hers were superior. She insisted mine were. "Not just a poet, but a lover too," I whispered at last. "Whatever they are, the best verses are your tears." Estella hadn't been crying. My words made her cry. She bit her lip, brought a handkerchief to her eyes, and said in a voice I'll never forget, so soft, so full of pain, "Now I get it. My poems are no good. They belong in the fire. No art, no inspiration. Nothing. Nothing at all." "What are you saying, Estella?" She didn't answer. "I understand," she repeated. "You never loved me. My angel. Never." I tried to take her hand, but she ran to the window. I followed, and she came back inside. Only after a long silence did she agree to hear me praise her verses again and explain why I had said tears were better. "Because they were hers," I told her. Her tears, I said, were her poems transformed into fine pearls. Estella swallowed a faint smile, dried her eyes, and read the verses again, first to herself, then aloud. Then she wanted me to read them again, and then she read them once more. We kept at it until her father came in. "Doctor," he said to me, "and if you came with us?" "To São Paulo?" "Yes. I would, if I could. I've thought about it, but there are my final exams. They're only 2 months, or less." They boarded a ship to Santos. I went to say goodbye on the deck, and when I returned to my attic room, I started writing her first letter right away. The next day I sent it. 3 days later, I received her first letter, a short, sad letter. She wrote more about the sea than about me, more about herself than the sea, and more about poetry than about any of us. The muse is the final comfort of everything. I understood. She must have shown the letter to her mother, and it wouldn't be wise to write anything too personal. I decided to be more careful this time. And so, the first weeks passed. I waited all through that 6th month, still hoping she'd come, but she never showed up. 2 months later, I finally wrote to tell her how much I missed her. She didn't reply. I wrote again. This time, I got a short note describing a ball hosted by the provincial president. It was a long, detailed letter full of excitement about the waltzes, the quadrilles, and in the end some verses she had written the next morning. She even asked me to get them published in some newspaper, and maybe add a little review. "She doesn't love me," I cried out, completely broken. This girl never cared for me at all. Not one word of comfort or explanation. Balls? What do I care about balls? I kept ranting like that, full of pain and anger. I talked to the walls, to the empty air, and I swear, if the devil had shown up, I would talk to him too, least he'd be someone alive. But the walls stayed silent, and the air just echoed my voice back at me. Still, I copied her verses, added a few lines of praise, and brought them to the Correio Mercantil. A friend of mine did me the favor of publishing them in the editorial section. That was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. The poems traveled to São Paulo, praised by the Correio Mercantil. Everyone read them. People who knew Estela were amazed by this young woman who could win such attention from the press in Rio. She was a great talent, a genius. One poet from the law school even compared her to Sappho. She was on top of the world, maybe even higher. But as the letters from her became fewer and fewer, I decided to go to São Paulo myself. That's when her father wrote me, explaining they were traveling to Sorocaba and other places, and wouldn't be back for another 2 or 3 months. Estela sent me a short note, just 3 lines long, along with another sonnet for the Correio Mercantil. Even though she didn't mention anything about a review this time, and even though I was so angry I could have choked her, I still wrote back with a few lines praising the great talent of our beloved local poet. She thanked me with another short note. And then nothing. No more letters. Where were they? I had to ask her father's business partners for updates, who shared news from his letters. That's how I followed the family's travels. I still remember the day someone told me that Guy Moraes was coming to Rio de Janeiro, but alone. Alone? I asked. That's what he says. And his family? They seem to be staying behind. He came by himself. I rushed to see him. He welcomed me politely, but there was a coldness in his eyes, a sadness, almost shame. He didn't speak much in the first few days. Still, big news and certain truths don't stay hidden for long. Estela was getting married. The wedding would take place in Sorocaba. I didn't hear anything else after that. That night, only the night, the sea, and the streets heard my curses and my pain, I don't know for how long. So it was, one after another, that I traded possible loves, losing them one by one. The woman I finally married didn't take the place of any Sylvia, Margarita, or Estela. She is a lady from Crato kind, loyal, strong despite her thin frame. She is the mother of 2 children, and I plan to send them to Recife one of these days.
Thank you for listening so far. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like our channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a new book is read. Have you heard of Machado de Assis? Machado de Assis, born in Rio de Janeiro in 1839, is considered one of the greatest writers in Brazilian literature and a master of psychological realism. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and short story writer whose works explore the complexities of human behavior with irony, subtlety, and deep introspection. Among his most famous novels are Dom Casmurro, which questions truth and memory, and the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, a satirical narrative told by a deceased man. Machado's literature often reflects the contradictions of Brazilian society, addressing issues like race, class, power, and identity in a sophisticated yet accessible style. Despite being born into poverty and facing racial prejudice, Machado de Assis rose to become the president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters and a symbol of literary excellence. His sharp wit and profound observations about society and the human soul make his works timeless and universally relevant. Today, he is recognized not only as a Brazilian icon, but also as a world-class author whose legacy continues to influence generations of writers and thinkers. Machado de Assis shows us that literature can be both elegant and critical, intimate and universal, humorous and profound. His stories remain as powerful and thought-provoking today as they were more than a century ago. Machado is a treasure of world literature, and through his voice, we discover the infinite layers of the human experience.